We see a crowd's terrified expressions in the flames that represent the past horror. After that, we leap forward in time and see our female protagonist Elise reincarnated as Takemoto, a surgeon. Takemoto is a highly regarded surgeon who has a reputation for saving lives in extreme situations, and her surgical intervention saves a cancer patient who is on the verge of death. We see Takemoto, her friend Shuko, and her coworker leaving for a restaurant, and they are both raving about Takemoto's surgical prowess. And we find out that Takemoto is actually trying to make up for her misdeeds from a previous life by saving as many people as she can. In a flash, it becomes clear that Takemoto is on the way to Germany to operate on a critically ill patient. Takemoto boards the flight, hoping to see her parents and her older siblings of her past life. We learn that in her new life, she was born as an orphan and led a lonely life in an orphanage as a kid. But unfortunately, Takemoto's plane crashes as she is on her way, and Takemoto manages to stay alive and lends a hand to the injured flight attendants. While authorities on a helicopter approach the crashed plane, she learns she is severely wounded, and after saving everyone on board, and she dies from blood loss. Takemoto is then given a second chance in her past life as the Empress of Briscia Elise de Florence, and her family's deaths and the kingdom's decline were allegedly her fault the first time around. She wakes up in her bed to find herself in the past, and she hurries to the dining room to see her family, with her eyes welling up with tears. Elise is happy to see her family after she's been given a second chance in her previous life, and her mother attributes her daughter's altered demeanor to the punishment she recently received. While her family notices a marked change, Marie is also taken aback by Elise's altered demeanor when she treats her staff with kindness. You can see Elise writing down all the things that went wrong the last time, and the story of her second eldest brother Chris's death in the Cusive campaign is recounted by her. She goes on to talk of the House of Treston's uprising and her stepmother Emily's untimely death from illness. Emperor Minchester dies of a severe chronic sickness, the House of Florence is exterminated, and she also remembers the execution of her father and eldest brother Ren for protecting her. After the Cusive War, an epidemic rising in the east spreads. 3 towns in the south are closed off, and estimated fatalities are 47,000 people. The action shifts to Elise paying a visit to Lyndon, her fiancé, and his family, alongside her parents and brothers Ren and Chris. This is when Elise demonstrates her grasp of global politics and, by extension, warfare. She takes this action to put off the disaster that is about to happen. This impresses Emperor Minchester. As they discuss Elise's potential marriage to Crown Prince Lyndon, son of Emperor Minchester, she expresses her reluctance to the idea, citing the immense responsibility it would impose on her. On the contrary, she expresses a desire to join the medical field and help people. After this, Emperor Minchester makes a wager with her that if she becomes a doctor before she comes of age, she can choose the path she wishes, or she has to marry Lyndon and become the Empress, and Elise agrees to take the wager. Elise privately meets with Crown Prince Lyndon to apologize for her past wrongdoings, and she then assures him that she will become a doctor and that he won't have to marry her. On the other hand, Lyndon displays interest in her and seems to have feelings for her. Elise receives the news that she will be starting an apprenticeship under the supervision of a doctor called Graham at Teresa Hospital, and Elise requests the pseudonym Rose from the medical team because she does not want to be treated differently. After being sent to Teresa Hospital to assist Dr. Graham, Elise is first made to feel inferior to him. He fears she won't make it through the first week in the ward. He escorts her to the ward, where those in critical condition who have been left by the hospital's doctors are housed. At first, everyone in the ward, even the patients, believe Elise is incapable of addressing her situation. Nonetheless, she helps the patients by drawing on her previous life's expertise as a doctor. With the help of the nurses, she starts by cleaning the unit, and she saves a critically ill patient after operating on him. After this, she treats every single patient in the unit. Dr. Graham is surprised by Elise's talents when he checks on her. Following this, he offers to be her mentor and apologizes for looking down on her. On the other hand, after Minchester informs his doctor about Elise's diagnosis, the doctor confirms that Elise was correct that Minchester has diabetes. Elise turns out to be right about the threat of the war as well. Dr. Graham takes Elise with him to a ward that houses grave patients. He then presents Elise in his disguise of Rose to the staff and leaves to carry on with other duties. The staff, however, is skeptical of Rose's capabilities given her fine appearance. Not long after that, a patient at the ward where Rose has been assigned is reportedly in critical condition. A physician present is prepared to take an X-ray, but when Elise sees how little time they have, she jumps right into the procedure. The surgery is complete by the time Dr. Graham arrives. At this time, he feels Rose is gifted and is very pleased by her expertise and skills. Not long after that, a mysterious man named Randall arrives for treatment. According to Dr. Graham, his condition is so bad that no amount of medical intervention would help. Elise states clearly that she will make every effort necessary to cater to the patient's condition. The identity of the mysterious man is revealed to be the prince at this time. He went to a fair while disguised. As we find out, in the present day, the prince wonders if Elise, who just started working at the hospital, can help Randall. However, Elise promises that she will save the patient. After this, Elise starts operating on the patient with the help of Dr. Graham and the prince. She not only performs the surgical procedure, but she also amazes Dr. Graham and the prince with her abilities. After that, the patient is moved from Teresa Hospital to the Royal Hospital. We see the prince talking to Elise, during which he appears to be extremely flushed, but Elise is concerned that he has a medical issue and that he needs to see a doctor. Meanwhile, a doctor from the Royal Hospital is gushing about the surgeon who changed the face of spleen surgery during a chat with the chief doctor at Teresa Hospital. At the end of the episode, the chief doctor at Teresa Hospital requests to meet with Dr. Graham and Elise. Dr. Goff requests to meet with Dr. Graham and Elise. We can tell they were summoned because Dr. Spen, who wanted to meet the surgeon who removed the spleen, is also there. They are taken aback when Dr. Graham reveals that Elise was the one, given that she has only recently begun training with him. On the other hand, Dr. Graham tells them she's brilliant. When they ask her to describe the procedure, she surprises them with her detailed account. After this, the three doctors sign a document so she can appear for the medical examination. After this, Dr. Spen informs the king of Elise's capabilities. Bent advises His Majesty to get the prince married to Elise at the earliest, but the king intends to keep the promise he made to Elise. On the other hand, the prince disguises him as Ron and visits Elise for treatment. His confidence in her ability to treat is low at first. Nevertheless, she succeeds in curing him entirely over the course of several days. Following their last session, the prince feels a burning desire to see Elise again, so he pays a visit to the hospital to help with the cleaning. After this, the prince asks Elise's brother for advice on how to win over his sister. Subsequently, he presents Elise with a pricey ring, but Elise refuses to take it. He proceeds by saying he'll buy her strawberry cakes and whatever else she wants for dessert, and Elise is truly ecstatic. Elise is forced to attend the birthday celebration of His Majesty. Her only wish is to get home and get prepared for her forthcoming examinations, but she feels obligated to attend the king's birthday celebration because she is a member of the noble family. During the celebration, Elise thinks back on her strained past life marriage with Lyndon and friendship with Mikhail. Not long after that, she finds Julianne, a respectable lady whose family is in conflict with her. Elise recalls the instances when she treated Julianne poorly and conveys her apologies. This time around, though, she treats Julianne with kindness and even takes care of her as she has a fever. A decent man approaches Elise and asks if she would dance with him during the party. Elise isn't interested in dancing with him, but she says yes to avoid upsetting him, but Prince Lyndon swoops in and asks her to dance with him, saving her from the embarrassing situation. The crowd is holding their breath in the hopes that the king will announce Lyndon's engagement during his address. He now subtly suggests that Lyndon is involved with Elise. In an intimate chat with Elise, he confides in her about his feelings for her as a daughter. He then asks her if they should back out of the wager. The king asks Elise to rethink her decision on the wager that she had previously made. It is then that he proceeds to explain to her that the kingdom requires a powerful queen like herself. The kingdom, on the other hand, is home to several medical professionals, and her contribution will not be missed. Elise, on the other hand, is adamant about not backing out of the wager since she is determined to become a physician and save as many people as she can. In the aftermath of this, Elise is shown studying intensively at home to ensure that she is able to pass her exam. Later that night, her brother visits her room and asks her to sleep. In light of the fact that Elise is firmly determined to win the wager, she wishes to study more. Her brother, on the other hand, requests that she get some rest because she is required to attend the birthday celebration for His Majesty the next day. The scene then cuts to the king's birthday celebration. There are a few attendees at the party who believe that Elise is the prince's fiancée because of the declaration made by the king. Elise is not very fond of that, but she is compelled to comply because she has no other choice. Not long after that, the Duchess begins to have a painful obstruction in her throat, and she is on the edge of passing away. Elise quickly performs a surgical procedure, which ultimately saves the Duchess. In light of the fact that Elise carried out a potentially dangerous operation without authorization, she is being held in isolation. Throughout Elise's time spent alone, she appears to be struggling from a terrible nightmare, and Prince Lyndon notices that Elise is experiencing a nightmare, and he is unable to tolerate the thought of her being in pain. Shortly after, he has to go, leaving Elise behind. Prince Michael introduces himself to Elise after that. On the other hand, Elise remembers him from her past life. He then shares sweets with her and they have an incredible time, chatting about each other's hopes and dreams. On the other hand, the king summons Dr. Graham and Dr. Spen to get an update about the Duchess's well-being post-surgery, and the two surgeons are unable to stop gushing about how efficiently and precisely Elise was able to carry out the procedure. After this, Dr. Sven requests the king to let him meet Elise to learn more about her procedures. Much to Ben's disappointment, the king promptly gives his consent. Elise can be seen receiving a visit from Dr. Graham and Dr. Sven in the final moments of the episode. Given the fact that Elise had previously worked at the hospital under the name Rose, they are puzzled to find her there. Dr. Sven and Dr. Graham are hoping to pay a visit to Elise. On the other hand, they find Rose there instead. They have no idea what's going on at first, but Elise then apologizes for keeping her identity a secret from them. Unlike Dr. Sven, who is overjoyed to have Elise on board because she is a medical marvel, Dr. Graham is bewildered and lost in contemplation, and this makes Elise think he's upset with her for being so coy about her true identity. After this, we witness Elise helping Dr. Graham during a surgical procedure. Elise has seen a change in Dr. Graham's treatment of her, indicating a more formal approach. She politely requests that he speak more informally with her. On the other hand, Dr. Graham flat out refuses, citing the fact that she's in a superior position and that he's only following protocol. Elise decides to talk to Dr. Graham because she cannot stop thinking about him being upset with her, but when she looks for Dr. Graham, she learns that he has already left for his home earlier than expected. The next day, Elise finds out that Dr. Graham is on leave for a bit, and she immediately starts to feel responsible for his disappearance. Then Elise goes to see Dr. Graham at his house. Yodel, who works as his housekeeper, is the one that greets her there. Yodel informs Elise that Dr. Graham has been stubbornly refusing to leave his room for the past several days. Elise continues to have a talk with Yodel while in the process of blaming herself for the situation. Yodel collapses on the floor shortly after, causing her to have a medical emergency. After this, Elise and Dr. Graham take her to the hospital as soon as possible. While Yodel is in Dr. Graham's care, Elise helps him in the operating room. Elise meets with Dr. Graham after her operation and expresses her regrets for concealing her identity. Dr. Graham, nevertheless, assures her that he is not upset with her and that she is now an inspiration to him. In response to her diligence, he explains that he has been devoting the past several days to writing his research paper. After this, Elise inquires about Dr. Graham's motivations for pursuing a career in medicine. Following this, Dr. Graham talks about how he was helpless when his family died in an epidemic. After that point, he says Yodel was his only family. He resolved to become a doctor so he could protect her and everyone he cared about from future loss. Julienne, who is a member of the child's family, is seen riding behind a carriage. In the magazine that she is holding, there is an article that has been written about Elise and her achievements in the field of medicine, including the award of honor that she is going to receive. Following that, as it is pouring outside, we see her carriage get involved in an accident. It dawns on her very quickly that her carriage came dangerously close to crashing with Elise. Elise is doing fine, but the man who rode the carriage is not. Following this, we see Julienne help Elise in treating the carriage rider. When Elise is completely drenched in the rain, she begins to feel sick. As a consequence of this, Julienne decides to take her to her house so that she can spend the night there. While Elise is staying at Julienne's house, Julienne continues to provide her with excellent care. The next day, the two of them get together to drink a cup of tea and bond over the fact that they tend to be competitive with one another. After that, we see a physician come to Julienne's house to examine Elise. Following that, he gives her some medications and is thrilled by the fact that Julienne and Elise are growing close. The fact that Elise had to stay and recover at the home of their rival family causes her family to be concerned when she finally comes home. Elise, on the other hand, confides in them that she and Julienne are friends, and she continues by stating that she took extremely good care of her and even shows them the sweets that Julienne had prepared for her. Elise is seen in her room where she is preparing for the approaching examinations. Given the fact that she has only been studying for several days now, her brother insists that she go out and spend some time rather than continue to study. While Elise is walking, she proceeds to walk in the direction of the hospital where she works without even realizing it, and she comes face to face with the prince, who is trying to pass himself off as Ron while she is there. In light of the fact that she is extremely fond of sweets, he then extends an invitation to her to accompany him to a cafe. Following that, we find Elise and the prince sitting together in a cafe. Despite the fact that she believes it is Ron, she is completely captivated by the prince. She is aware of the fact that Ron acts in a manner that is very similar to that of the prince. The prince then takes her to a theater to watch a romantic play. There is a fire that breaks out in the theater as the play is being performed. After that, we witness Elise and the prince helping a few people in escaping the structure in a safe way. Immediately after this, they hear echoes of children. After that, they make a beeline for the basement, where they discover a boy who is trapped and his sister is unwilling to abandon him. As a consequence of this, the prince requests that Elise escort the girl out while he goes to save the young boy, and Elise takes the little girl out and waits for Ron to show up. In the process of rescuing the young kid, the prince's disguise starts to fade. Following this, the prince rescues the little boy and assures Elise that he's alright. As soon as he recognizes Chris, he makes a quick escape as his disguise continues to fade. Chris takes Elise back home and apologizes, but she assures him that the fire starting wasn't predictable and that it certainly wasn't his fault. Elise receives the Medal of the Order of the Imperial Rose in recognition of her significant contributions to the field of medicine. When Elise is presented with the honor, His Majesty Minchester appears to be satisfied with the situation. After this, Elise notices that Minchester seems to be ill as they are having a conversation. Whenever she makes an effort to diagnose him, he dismisses her concerns as unnecessary. In addition to that, he requests that Lyndon go and get him a drink. As soon as Minchester has a drink, he collapses on the floor. Elise checks on him and comes to the conclusion that he is having a heart attack. Her intervention saved him from passing away, and he is subsequently sent to the Imperial Hospital. Although he is currently being treated in the hospital, the king's condition remains extremely severe. In addition, the House of Child is successful in getting Lyndon in prison over the grounds that he poisoned his father, and the House of Child takes this action to guarantee Mikhail's succession to Minchester, not Lyndon. During her brief break at the hospital, Elise pays Lyndon a visit at his captivity facility. After that, she witnesses Lyndon reliving the extremely distressing event that occurred when his mother passed away. Almost immediately after that, Elise receives the news that His Majesty has experienced another massive shock, and she immediately leaves to go to the hospital. While Elise is making her way to the hospital, a few men who have been dispatched by the House of Child make an effort to kill her in order to stop her from being able to save the king, so Elise attempts to get away from the men. We learn that they are supporting the nobles in their attempt to make Mikhail the next king, not Lyndon, who's the rightful heir. Just when the men are about to attack Elise, Mikhail shows up and saves her, and after this, he escorts her to the hospital so she can save his father. At the hospital, Elise learns that the king's condition isn't stabilizing. Furthermore, the reports show everything is normal. Following this, she asks Lyndon's permission to perform surgery on his father that could potentially be deadly, but leaving him untreated would kill him. We then see Lyndon telling her that he trusts her. We then see Elise perform the surgery with the help of a few doctors, including Dr. Spen and Dr. Graham. By performing the critical surgery, Elise manages to save the king's life. Elise then spots Mikhail going away and hopes for him and Lyndon to become close again. We then see Elise about to go take her exams. Everyone has concerns since Elise hasn't slept, but Elise assures them that she's alright. Following this, Lyndon offers to escort Elise to the examination hall, but before Elise can go for her exams, Lyndon tells her that he's aware that they are walking different paths. However, he's hoping that their paths will cross at some point. Furthermore, he talks about taking her to have her favorite strawberry shortcake. This hints to Elise that he previously disguised himself as Ron, and she takes the hint. We then see Elise give the exam. While writing the paper, she thinks that the exam is quite challenging, but she takes it in good spirits. After the results of the exams are out, it is revealed that Elise passed the test with flying colors, scoring the highest marks. Furthermore, the questions in the exam were questions that were unanswered in the era, and this truly impresses the board, and the news reaches the king. We see Elise pay a visit to the king to check on him. Following this, Elise and the king go for a walk. During the walk, the king tells Elise that he was wrong in thinking that Elise was more fit to marry Lyndon and help run the country, and tells her that he has realized that she is excellent in her field. The season ends with Elise telling His Majesty that she hasn't won the wager yet and that she has to do a lot in the medical community to achieve that before she comes of age. Let me know what you think about this anime in the comment, and as always, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video.